here's the key. And he goes, oh, it's so good.
Right.
That took me a year to figure out.
Hey, what's up? It's Russ and Ryan. Today we got the chance to sit down with the one and only Paul Reed Smith to talk about the intricacies of tone crafting, musicality, math, rabbits, farting in a spacesuit, losing your noodles, and all things PRS.
So I look like the interviewer and you look like the interviewee.
Actually does a little
that
bit.
is not the way this is supposed to go.
No, I
it's
really
not.
appreciate you having me here. Thank you for hosting.
Man, you are wearing me out.
Come on, man. It's all in good fun.
It is good fun.
Absolutely. Clearly, we're surrounded by lots of PRS goodness, and the man himself is here. Thank you for coming.
Thank
Really.
you for having me.
Russ,
you guys,
do you want to lead? You had
AMS
a
has been
question.
a fundamental arm of our business for decades. You know, there have been times where things were tough, and you guys just kept coming through for us, and your customers kept coming through for us. And there's a lot of guitar expertise in this business, and I think that I want to like stand on a rock and scream that. I think it's important. It's not just a click business. There's a lot of guitar expertise here.
Nerds, for sure.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. But, you know, like you said before, I mean, if it's not selling for you, you don't make it. And it's the same for us. We carry your guitars because people want them. It's that simple. But we're also fans of it, which makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know?
It makes it a lot easier for us too.
Yeah.
I have many dealers that aren't fans of us, and no matter how hard I work or go there, it just doesn't seem to shift. With you, it's almost like family. So, you know.
Well, you highlighted it was a decades-long relationship,
Yeah.
and from what I understand, next year you're coming up on your 40th anniversary, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right?
That sounds about right to me.
2025. So, I mean, this is a company I mentioned earlier in the Game of Tones, too, which I deeply admire. And I know it sounds we're mutually just going back and forth here, but 40 years, and there's no end in sight, seemingly. You're constantly innovating as a company. You got a great crew and a great team, and that innovation continues to push forward. What are you looking at? Like, what's your milestone here at 40, almost 40 years, we'll call it, where you're looking back at that 40-year mark of all that's been accomplished as you look forward? Because you constantly seem like a forward-thinking guy.
I don't know. We're way over the line, so let me explain. So Leo Fender, 48 to 66, something like that, right? So that was 18 years. Ted McCarty, 48 to 64, for us, we're, maybe double that time, And when I hear the term looking back or looking forward, I'm thinking about looking back at what Ted McCarty and Christian Martin and Leo Fender and, Guadagnini and Stradivari and all these great guitar makers did. And when I run into an instrument that has something to teach us, I try to get my hands on it as fast as I can, because whatever the maker thought in that day is in that guitar. The guitar will talk to you. The amp will talk to you. We've been buying a lot of old Marshalls, and we've gotten it down to the point we found the 6-month period where they were peaking. And it's just, what is that about? Why are they so much better than the other ones? Everybody knows they've changed the schematics, but there's lots of things that changed. We are just getting to the point where we're not looking back anymore. We're only looking forward in terms of not just trying to learn from the past and do it better. We're actually in a new era. And I have a recording on my phone of what the new sound for us is going to be. And John Mayer heard, he says, well, it sounds like there's an octave pedal on it. It literally sounds like it's got way more octave up in it, and you can hear every note vocally from the guitar. It doesn't sound like a Strat, doesn't sound like a Tele, doesn't sound like a Les Paul, doesn't sound like a Gretsch, doesn't sound like anything we've heard before. We think we have their hands around a new sound. And the day they handed me the guitar, I didn't really understand, and Eric Granroth, who works in our private stock department, handed me the guitar, and I started to play it, and I welled up, and I was like, I don't even know how to deal with what I'm hearing. This is the new sound. This is it. This is what's coming.
Now, the key is...
It's not one thing.
It's not one
No,
thing.
How do you
I wish
replicate it?
everybody wants it to be one thing.
Yeah.
It's not one thing. It's about, and look, it's the tuning pegs and the way they're tensioned and their weight and the nut material and the neck material and the fingerboard material and how the truss rod's put in and how the pickups are made and how the bridge is mounted and the neck angle and the finish, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And when you get it all in one spot, it all comes and did this new thing. I hoped maybe a little of it, but I never expected to go just like in barbershop quartet where they hit the note right and the whole room starts to ring when there's no microphone.
Sure.
You know, that's what happens. And to me, we're getting closer and closer and closer to that all the time with every guitar we're shipping. And to me, that doesn't sound old. That sounds new to me. And that's what I want. But those guitars, McLaughlin guitars are available. And John is losing his noodles over how good that guitar sounds.
Wow.
So actually Keith's guitar was the beginning of that idea.
Does he get a cut of the action then, or?
No, Keith gets nothing from me except a hug.
Well,
What, really? I'm going to make him an investor because you said something?
I don't think anything matters what I say. You know that
Actually,
already.
man, if you worked for me, this would go differently.
Well, but how do we replicate that? How do we get every...
It's not your job to replicate it. It's your job
I thought I was working for you.
It's not your job to replicate it. It's our job to replicate it. And when these sounds come in, let your customers know. Look, SEs are getting closer and closer to that every day. I mean, all the guitars that we're making are just getting closer and closer. And as we put the pieces of the puzzle together, it just keeps getting better and better and better. And we're shipping guitars that sound like that right now. And they're available. And for me, to track it and to listen for that sound as the products are coming in, we once did a Hendrix amp video at one of your competitive dealers, and it sounded just like Hendrix, and we were using one of those. It was the amp that sounded like Hendrix, not the guitar. That guitar sounds gorgeous. It's got a clarity to it, a high mid-rangey clarity to it that's musical. For me, it's not about this or that or this or that or this or that. It's the combination and how musical does it sound, which is what the show is about. How do I get this combination of the mic cabinet, the microphone, the amplifier, the pedals, the playing in the hands, the guitar, all of it, and all the settings on the, every time we turn a knob, it sounded different. So to me, it's the whole chain. And with the guitar, it's the whole chain.
So is it fair to say then that as you're coming up on that 40th, we would not be expecting any reissue series from PRS in terms of like, I mean, you have long enough history. There's you know, I'm sure there's people that would look at that and go,
for the most part,
no.
The Dead Spec guitar that we did for John was a reissue of what he played on that tour. McCarty's are, that we can keep making, are issues of what that guitar was originally. Customs are modified reissues of what the original custom was. Paul's guitar is a reissue of what I play. But that doesn't, in the term you're using, reissue, no, not at all.
No interest.
No, there's always an interest. If the customer has got a piece of gear that is musical, that's doing the job for them, I'm always interested. I don't really care about, like when you put the pedal, the distortion pedal up, that wasn't something we made, I didn't care. I was just trying to get the sound out of it.
Right.
So for me, it's about how musical it is. And if you can get, I mean, these pedals weren't available to David Gilmour when he did all those beautiful sounding records. You know, if he was doing that now, I'd be in there, please try this. But that doesn't take my respect away from how beautiful the tone was that he used. I actually got my hands on one of those pedals he used in the early days. There was one at a used shop in Maryland. I plugged it in. I was stunned how close it sounded.
To being Gilmour in a box, essentially?
Yeah.
Pretty well.
So here's one for you. With that mentality that you're describing to us, the way you've designed and continue to push forward.
And it's a combination of things. It's not one thing.
Right.
To blame
and so
it on
to
one
that
thing is
end,
nuts.
have you ever looked at a particular model, modified it over the years a number of times, and then gone, maybe I should have just gone back a little bit to version 3, version, you know, whatever, and then maybe version 12 is a little taste of version 3 or something like that.
Absolutely. I'll give you an example.
That's a good question, by the way.
The Jimmy Herring played an NF3.
Yep.
Okay, that was a guitar that won Guitar of the Year from all the magazines worldwide. We got the MIPO award for it. Couldn't give them away. They were sitting in stock here. Nobody was calling for them. Herring picks one up and goes, no, you guys missed it. That's magic. And starts playing it in Widespread Panic all the time. State-of-the-art guitar on a guitar we couldn't give away. And now, good luck finding one on eBay or Reverb. Yeah, so we're using those pickups again. We had it right.
Sure.
Yeah, but the world didn't want to acknowledge it. The guitar business is slow to move, slow to change its mind. Stratocasters were pretty much out of business till Hendrix picked one up. I mean, they were using Jaguars and Jazz Masters and all this other stuff, Music Masters, Mustangs. Yeah, Hendrix picked up a Strat, we're off to the races. Same thing, you couldn't give a Les Paul away and Slash picked one up and the world changed, right?
Sure, sure.
Same thing happened with the Les Pauls when the Allman Brothers started playing them. You know, when these artists pick up these guitars, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
So, yes, of course we had it right. We call it, we were so close to God and we didn't know. We were standing right there. It was right next to us. And all we had to do was turn a knob a little bit like I was doing with the earlier. But we didn't know to turn the knob. The problem with this pedal is it's too powerful. The knobs do way too much. It's all subtle little adjustments when you finally get it. I should have made it so the ranges were way smaller.
Sure.
You can do a V2, it's fine. You just get rid of that. I personally don't mind. I'm just saying. But that's the question here, because clearly what you're talking about here, and we always talk about it, building a better mousetrap, taking something that Ted McCarty did and Leo Fender did, combining it ostensibly into
Or
a little
learning
bit
from
of that. Yeah, and when I look at what you do with saddles on a bridge or tuning pegs, I mean, things that people often dismiss as like, it's not that important. And of course, you're saying they are important, not only in and of themselves, but in the sum of the parts of the guitar. When you run out of aha moments, is that when you go, okay, we're done? Or is that ever going to happen?
No, I lose my memory, I'm done.
Okay. Will you forget about today?
No.
Okay. That's
Unless
the most
I'm 90
important thing
and
in the world.
know, I say, you're important to me, but I don't know who you are, which is what my aunt said to me.
Oh, wow.
This is a compressor. People are using it as a boost pedal. We didn't intend it. Have you ever used this as a boost pedal?
That's what I intended to use in the episode.
Yeah,
was
I've
to
used
use it as a
compressors
boost.
as a
But I
boost.
didn't feel there was a need to at that point.
What was your hope for it? I mean, obviously it's a
But
compressor.
it was an LA2A in a box, which is exactly what it is. I've used it on a vocal track. They work great. Nobody knows this. This is a multi-band compressor. It's only compressing the mid-range and the high end. It's leaving the bass alone, which is why it doesn't suck down.
Okay.
Wow.
But it's also a leave
didn't
on
know
all
that.
the time kind of pedal. I mean, players
Yeah.
always want that, where it's like, I can't turn it off. The minute I do, I want it back on.
Okay, well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Not at all.
But it didn't say Acme Coolness Enhancer, that you leave it on all the time. It said Mary Cries, right?
Yeah.
So we got that one right.
So you,
Look, I don't know. I want it to be musical. I don't care if it's not our stuff. What I do care is that if our stuff, don't just leave it in the case and make a decision about what it sounded like because of the internet. Please pick it up and plug it in.
Yeah.
People won't even buy the guitar. If the little white foam's not around the neck, I can't take the guitar. That means nobody played it. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's important to me that people try stuff.
Yeah.
Did you plug it in? I mean, the last Dragons we did sounded great, and people got them in, and the customers wanted them in the box, never opened. I said, you never plugged it in? They went, no. I was like, oh.
There are players and there are collectors, and we know that. I mean, there are people that will
That's
take
okay with
beautiful
me.
guitars and never take them off a wall
Guitars
rack.
are art.
They are art. I mean, it's why we put them first thing in a brick and mortar store. It's the first thing people want to look at, which is true. But there is something to saying, we've talked about this too. All the refinements that you've made to your own designs, to previous designs, and you say a lot of it's in the hands of the player. We could talk about Tonewood and does it matter? And I think we all could say it does. If it didn't, you could make a guitar out of anything.
Can we talk about that?
Sure.
yeah.
This is a safe place.
No, it's not. This is going up worldwide.
Oh.
This is not safe.
No one's watching yet.
There are 3 stages to anything new. First stage, everybody's venomously opposed.
Of course.
Stage 2, everybody's against. And stage 3 is the accepted norm. And this interview is going to go through all 3 stages, just like everything
Don't
else.
read the comments.
Oh, shit.
I never do.
Exactly.
Okay. If you have a 57 Strat and you change the switch and you change it to a 5-way switch, it doesn't change the value of the guitar. Okay, because the 5-way is accepted, doesn't change the tone, and it's okay. If you take and put Grovers on a 59 Les Paul, the value drops like by about $75,000, and then if you put the old tuning pegs on, you get about $50,000 of it back.
Yeah.
Okay, which means it's the worst repair minus-wise, and then the best repair you ever did, right? If the reason that people like the old ones back on is the guitars sound different, but the tuning pegs, according to the internet, doesn't make any difference.
Right.
I mean, just by the value of that I just said, it makes a difference.
Right.
So I was on the phone with a rock star yesterday. He said, I had a problem with this one piece of gear. I changed the part to a new clone. It never sounded the same. I sold it. It broke my heart. For me, to take that one thing away from me, that Tonewoods don't make any difference. All right, if it doesn't make any difference, it should be make the neck this long, have it all fretboard, make it out of balsa wood, and the guitar will sound fine. It's only the pickup and the amp. Why don't you just put a rubber bridge and a rubber nut on it, and the high end that the string didn't make anymore? By their theory, dead strings make no difference. It's only the pickup and the amp. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Take the one of the main things that make a difference in the tone of the instrument away from me, because it doesn't make any difference. But if they were a violin maker, they would instantly say, well, it does make a difference, because then the cavity of the instrument is their amplifier. I just don't buy it. I've had too many experiences where we've straightened out the acoustic tone and the guitar came alive in the amp. I've had too many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of experiences where it has made a difference. If you coat the guitar completely with clear G silicone rubber caulk, which is essentially over-plasticized paint, plasticizer is non-drying oil. You put non-drying oil in the paint so that it never cracks. It's going to change the tone of the guitar, and the idea that it doesn't change the tone of the guitar is nuts. But you can watch all the videos online that prove that what I'm saying is not true. I don't know. I just don't buy it. What I buy is that sometimes people with no experience have a better experience than people with experience. Let me explain. If I do a clinic and I play 3 acoustic guitars, the woman in front who's never played a guitar in her life knows which one was the best sounding guitar instantly, where everybody's just judging from their old experiences.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So to me, I want it to be musical. I want it to be a good piece of gear. I want it to take care of the musician. I want it to be a usable thing. In the pedal board world, you say it made the pedal board. It was I bought 30 pedals and I only have 10 on my board. 20 of them didn't make the board, right? I want stuff that makes the board, whether it be the amplifier or the cabinet or the guitar or whatever it is. And to me, that's really, really important. And I don't really know how to explain it. At this point, it's getting to the point where if I say something, that's the Antichrist. But if the internet blogs say it, that's God.
Sure.
In a way, maybe that's okay, because they're looking at me as a snake oil salesman who's trying to hawk my gear, right? And they're looking at it as an opinion from a non-biased point of view, which is fine with me. I don't have a problem with that. What I got a problem with is people making up their minds about what it is before they ever even tried it. You know, when I'm around Dennis Chambers, who's a wonderful drummer, who plays with Victor all the time, he's a king. He only decides what he thinks from his experiences. He doesn't have people tell him the way it is and that's the way it is. He looks into it to make his own mind up. I like those people. Carlos Santana gave me a chance to be a guitar maker because his experience was, this deserves a chance. And I like that. I want people to do it from their own experience, not what they're told. Now, that said, the blur of all the opinions on the internet can give you an idea into what to look into.
Sure.
But I can't tell you how many times everybody's waved stuff off and I thought it was magic. And I've bought a bunch of stuff everybody said was magic that I waved off.
So here's a controversial question, though. One of the YouTube influencer blurbs, blogs, whatever you say that I hear from time to time is that PRS guitars are too good and that they're too consistent. And that you could pick
drinking
up
water now.
You could pick up, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I'm drinking water because he's making my mouth dry with the question.
That was my fear.
And they all sound the same, but they all sound great.
And that's not the way it is.
It bothers me because I don't really understand the complaint, I guess, and I'm sure I'll hear from it.
It is true that our window is narrower. The good one and the bad one of the same model is much closer than other brands. That's true. My job is to keep moving it up so that the window is moving up. I don't know, somebody called me after we released the Silver Sky and said, you just farted in a spacesuit. And he was mad because he didn't see the need. And when I held the neck on that mirror instrument, I welled up because that neck shape hadn't been tooled up in 50 years. And I liked it. It felt like an old guitar to me. That rock star ended up buying one and loves it.
Yeah.
And I said, you called it a fart in a spacesuit.
We went through your 3 levels, right? Hate.
Yeah, hate, pretty much against and accepted norm. And he goes, I was wrong. I liked all his decisions, he said. I liked the decision about the pickups. I liked the decision about the neck shape, the action, the way it feels, the weight, all that stuff, right? So for me, is it a good piece of gear? Is it going to do its job? When Carlos Santana comes to the factory and he sees a Santana model line, he said, I'll take that home. And he puts it in the case and puts it in the back of the limo and goes and stands out at Wolf Trap or wherever he's playing at night and goes for it. That guitar hasn't played more than 45 seconds in the entire life. And I'm holding on. I'm holding on by the seat. I want it to be a good piece of gear. Sure. When I saw him play on the Grammys, they said, how'd you feel, Paul? I said, I was glad he didn't break a string. I mean, and Rupert Neve said the same thing about his consoles. He said, everybody's talking about the tone of this, the tone of that. He says, we were trying to make sure people weren't fired. We built them like tanks so that somebody mixing on the BBC didn't lose a channel and the person went out and they lost their job.
Yeah.
He built them robustly so that they never failed. So there's a lot of that going on too. Look, the claim that the PRSs are too perfect and have no soul and all that, I have some real insight into where that is. So somehow I've picked one up and it didn't move me is a fair comment. But somehow I've never picked one up and it's never moved me. That's not fair. We had a rock star, a really famous country player, pick up one of the NF53s and he goes, the tone has never talked to me. This thing is exactly what I need. The truth is we never made a guitar that had that kind of tone for that kind of player, and so it didn't talk to him. That's fair. It didn't talk to me. It's fair. I don't care. I had an amp, it didn't talk to me. That's fair. I don't have a problem with that. What's interesting, when we released the Hendrix amps, I thought people wanted to sound like Hendrix. Lettieri wasn't interested in sound like Hendrix when he was playing through a Hendrix amp. He wanted to sound like Mark Lettieri.
Sure.
Nobody has been going after Hendrix tones with Hendrix amps. They've been using them as pedalboard amps, which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
But they're using them, and that goes back to your point, that someone's getting a sound that they want, and you were able to help them realize that. And Russ and I were talking about this before. I mean, people talk about, I'm surrounded by like gorgeous, glittery, candy-like guitars. And I bring my old dog in here, and the idea of, a PRS is too pretty to beat up. It's too perfect. Look at this thing.
You're beating it up. It's great.
It's been beat to hell. It's better now than when I got it, and that was 35 years ago.
You should erase his signature on the back. That makes it worth less money.
McCarty. Anyway, but my point is, you know what I mean?
How smart do you have to be to make jokes up like that fast?
He's one of a kind.
Pretty smart.
Yeah.
I'm pretty awesome, actually. But the problem is, it's exhausting. Yeah. But that's my point.
Wait a minute. He's using my lines now.
That was one of your lines?
That you're exhausting? Yes, that was one of mine. Yes, I
walked into that. But look, I know you looked at this and you thought, well, there's 30 things I would update on this. And I said, no, I love this. And you said, great. So you're happy, leave it alone, which I agree with, by the way. If it is good to the player, it is good. But let's not quibble by the fact that this thing was gorgeous and mint when I bought it. And I think it's even better now, beat up and used, because you could tell someone enjoyed this.
I don't like when people put war wounds in babies. A relic guitar is war wounds in a baby. That is real war wounds.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's fine with me. I don't have a problem with it. Somebody once explained to me why relics are so important. Said when somebody has a job and they work all day long and they never will have the opportunity to tour, for them to own an instrument that looks like it had toured is not something they have an opportunity to do. They don't play in the clubs like I'm sure you play from all the things in it, right? You play in bands, right?
Well, it's been around a long time.
Okay,
yeah,
right.
Sure.
So, but they don't have that opportunity, and they want one that feels burned in,
Sure.
And that's okay with me. That was the most relic sense ability that I'd ever heard. Not putting war wounds in babies made sense to me too. We've reliced a few guitars in private stock, and they did a really good job. And some people just drag a few chains across it and throw it on the floor and this, that, and the other, and it doesn't look like real war wounds to me. But I don't know. I like that you like the guitar and you're willing to do that. It's too pretty. I can't take it on the gig. It's not a.
Yeah, that was never my mentality.
Look, you only live one time. Take the guitar out.
Sure,
well, that's what we love about Joe Bonamassa. The fact that he's bringing out a multiple 59s, and he's like, yeah, I'm using these.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. Now, obviously, we can't do that. And I actually don't mind relics in terms of how they feel. I like the way an old guitar feels.
Yeah.
In terms of making it look like, I'm Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan, there is some folly to that. But I think what it comes down to is the scars on this were played because you played the guitar. How many vintage guitars you picked up and someone's like, this is mint? I'm like, then it's probably not very good. If that guitar is 50 years old and it's still mint, no one really played it. And there were bad guitars back then.
He's got thoughts on this, you can tell.
And
I sold a vintage guitar once that has all these stories in it. So I'm standing at the vintage guitar show in Dallas. And this guy walks up and he's got a piece of paper on his chest. It says 57 Strat, $14,000. $14,000.
And this was what year?
It was 10 years ago today.
That's a steal.
The guitars were 35 wholesale. Maybe 24 wholesale, 35 or something like that. And I reached over and I put my hand around it and I go, oh no, a real one. I mean, I could feel from the neck carb. I went, uh-oh. I said, where'd you get that? I said, whatever you do, don't move. Where'd you get it? He said, my friend passed away. It's his wife's guitar. And I'm here to help her. I said, that's too little money. And he said, I know, but I want to just get it. I said, don't move. I'll help you. So I took him over in the booth. I said, the guitar's worth 20 minimum wholesale, maybe 32, 34 retail, and I'll help you get it. And he goes, well, if you do that, I'll give you half the money. And I went, okay, fine, whatever. I took him over to a dealer, and the dealer says to me, what do you want for it? I went, oh no. Oh no.
Not playing that game?
No. You have 10 seconds. I'm going to count to 10. And when I get to 10, I'm going to call the biggest dealer in Japan who is headed back for the airport. He's going to turn his car around, miss the flight, and come back and buy it. You have 10 seconds. And I started counting 1, 2. When I got to 7, he goes, 20 grand. I said, it's a deal. So I left and I said, take the money. And he says, okay. So I come back and they've taken the screws out of the pickguard and taken the neck off the guitar. And I came unglued. The screws had never been out of the pickguard. The screws had never been off. I mean, it had never been apart. It was a widow's guitar, right? And I said, what are you doing? He says, well, I had to check. And I was like, well, maybe that's true, but you just took the screws out of a guitar. It's never had been apart. What are you doing, right? I kind of regret not giving him the money myself at the time. But I'm not a vintage guitar dealer. It's not my thing, right?
Right.
So 2.5 hours later, I'm doing a clinic. And this guy walks up and he hands me $300 in $100 bills. And I said, who are you? He goes, I'm the guy with the Strat. I've been looking for you for 2 hours to give you the $300. 14 and 20 is a difference of 6. He owed me 3. I didn't even think of it. I never did the calculation.
That's good math.
But for me, it's always been about how good a guitar is and what's fair. It's never been about what's the vintage value or what can I steal it from you for or any of that. I always wanted people to get a good deal. And I'm sure somebody has that guitar in their collection now and it's a pristine 57 Strat in their collection, and they love to have it. John gets upset when really, really great instruments end up in collections. He wants them played. When we went to the Met and we gave them the guitar, he was like, why don't you give me this guitar and give him another one? This one sounds really good, Paul. This should not go in a museum. And I said, I already gave it to him, John. I'm so sorry. But John McLaughlin's one of our geniuses, and it makes sense that he would want the instrument played, right? I don't know. I just want what's good for the industry and what's good for the guitars and what's good for the amplifiers and is it a good piece of gear? You have a really good piece of gear sitting in that little recording studio over there. There's a Manly Force whatever mic pre. For the money, that's a really good piece of gear. You could use it to record any record. I mean, there's lots of gear here you could record records with. You know, I'd have to go through each cabinet and each top and each thing. But for me, I know you can record records with these things because people do record records with these things. So I just want what's good for the musician. And you know, I'm never going to get out of he's just saying that because, you know, the PRS has got to sell stuff. And maybe that's true, but it's not really true. What's really true is I want good pieces of gear.
Sure.
You know, I've always said if somebody made a guitar that was better than my own, I'd play it.
Yep.
And I ran across one the other day.
I was going to say, all right, let's hear it.
And I bought it on the spot. And I figured out what it was that I was missing. And because there had to be some mechanical engineering physics reason that it was doing something that a guitar that we didn't have did.
Can you share the juicy details?
No.
Fair enough.
Son of a... Fair enough.
It was an old Junior that had an acoustic quality to its sound, not an electric quality. People don't know, old P90s are really beautiful sounding on the G string, but the high E string will take your head off. No, people don't think of P90s as bright up top. But a really good guitar player knows that P90s up top are really bright. It wasn't the electric tone of the guitar. There was an acoustic tone coming out of this instrument. And it turned out that he'd put an aftermarket set of studs and an aftermarket bridge on it that weren't the original parts. And so that's why I was unfamiliar with it. And I bought them and put them on one that we got. It sounded exactly the same and I knew what it was.
Interesting.
But what I'd heard, I had not heard before. And for me, I wanted to find out what that was. I mean, I'm not a guitar collector. I have guitars for sale now. I don't care. Right. Because we found out what it was. But I feel like a tunnel rat. I want to keep going down all the rabbit holes and finding what's in them and to find out what's going on. And so the first thing I did when I looked around this room was I looked at, find out if there was a piece of meat in the room that I could take home. Right?
Sure.
I'm sorry. That's just who I am.
Well, that's what we all do. I mean, you go to a gig as much to hear the music, and as players, you go, oh, what's their rig? What are they playing? What's on their board? And, you know, and we know this. I mean, you could take a great player and give them a Strat or a PRS or a Junior, and they're going to make it sound pretty good. Good gear makes good players sound good. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think for you, from what I gather, the success that is PRS is that you were able to tune out the negativity. You said, I'm going to continue to follow whatever is in my head and somehow execute it into a guitar. And if someone wants to trash that online, let them do it. I mean, the biggest satisfaction in the world is the amount of knives out when you came out with the Silver Sky and the number of people. If you had believed from the vitriol that you read, no one would have bought that guitar and then it ended up being the best-selling guitar for years to come. That's got to be satisfaction, and you can't say it wasn't.
There was a conversation about that. Remember when John Mayer announced he was going to play in the Dead?
Sure.
You remember the vitriol? What's the word you used?
Vitriol.
Okay, there was a lot of that about that.
Yeah.
And I said, John, are you worried about it? He said, absolutely not. And I said, why not? He says, because I've been to rehearsals. I know what it sounds like. Same thing happened with the Silver Sky. We knew what the guitar was. When we released that guitar, he was getting 1,000 likes a minute. Not 1,000 views, 1,000 likes a minute. That was 60,000 likes an hour. It blew up our website.
I was just counting. Yeah. No, that is a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And to me, when he released the SE Silver Sky, he brought all these artists in and had them play them for the first time in front of cameras. The courage of it is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I was taught by John not to worry about it. When the band was afraid when they sold out Madison Square Garden to add another date, and they added 2 more, and they sold them all out. They didn't know how big this was going to be, but he had a really good sense of it. And he had been to rehearsals, and so when he started playing the band, everyone, oh, sounds like Jerry, and he would hold Jerry's face right in front of him to try and honor his memory, which is actually pretty interesting. If you've ever been around John Mayer, he sings melodies all day long. He's singing. He can sing any and play any tune he's ever heard. Carlos Santana's the same way. He's nothing but he's in the back room before the gig playing all these melodies just constantly. These gifted musicians are really, as David Grissom says, I have music in my head all day long. I can't stop it. Mark Tremonti, Miles Kennedy they're musicians. Did you ever watch the video of me sitting in with the band last time?
I actually have, yeah.
Okay. There's a story to that. He spent 25 minutes, Mark spent 25 minutes with me backstage showing me the tune so that I wouldn't be watching his hands while we were playing. And so at the beginning of the video, you see me turn my back on Mark and I went after Miles because Kennedy was singing his butt off, and his voice down low had all this big low octave note in it, and when it high, it wasn't there. And he always makes fun of me and plays Camptown Ladies in my face at the gig. And he started. I said, "Really?" And so you can see he starts it that time. Then he backed off on it. Right. That was so much fun. But Mark spent 25 minutes with me teaching me that tune, and I said, "Can we do it again? Can we do it again? Because his inversions were complicated. The arrangement was complicated. The way in which it was all in 4, but it sounded like it was in odd meters in places. And bless his heart for doing that. I mean, that's the background of that sit-in. That was no sit-in. He taught me the tune. And that's Mark and Miles. They're just ridiculous. These people at the top of their game are really something.
Yeah,
they're forces to be reckoned with.
I'm sure. Whether it's musical or, you're a guitarist, obviously, yourself, like an artist. You play in a band, you have your own band, and you have your technical side. Where does that line get drawn as you're designing guitars where you have readouts that can come out in a machine that tells you, here's the specs for this pickup that you wanted to check out, and then you have the musicality side. And there's got to be, obviously, a marriage of that. There's got to be a balance of that. Do you tend to lean on more the music or the specs?
The music is where you try the gear out.
And that's its proving ground.
That's the proving ground, yeah. That's where we find out what it's really made out of. Does it, look, if you've got a boat of guitars, 12 guitars, if the rock star is not going for one of yours, you haven't done your job.
Sure.
It's our fault. Because we got an opportunity. It's in the boat. We made it to the last 12 of the American Idol contestants, but we didn't get to the final.
Yep.
All these musicians that I'm mentioning, they're all kings. They make up their mind on their own. They're not told what to think, which I adore. Those are the proving grounds. I took a guitar to Florida with me. I took my vacation early this year because normally with the last quarter we work really hard. As at AMS, I'm sure the last quarter you work really hard, right? Because that's Black Friday and all that.
Holiday season.
Right? And we took off, and I took a guitar with me, and it wouldn't do something that it was supposed to do. I came home, and I needed to fix it. But that was proving ground. I spent a lot of time with the instrument. So the studio is an amplifier. You're in compressed time frame. There's 7 or 8 musicians there. They all got to get their track done in a day. Who's up next? Who's up next? Who's up next? And believe me, if the gear's not doing the job, you know it in minutes.
I'm going to derail you again.
I'm not derailing me at all. That's the proving ground.
No, we'll take it's not a math question. We haven't gotten to that part yet. Models over let's just call it 40 years. Has there been a model where you were like, I don't know if this is going to really do as well as, and then it just took off like a rocket? And maybe even the inverse question, a model where you're like, this thing is going to be a beast.
That just happened. The 594 SE we thought was going to blast off for outer space, and the Grissom SE we thought we'd do okay. And the Grissom thing, you guys ordered gazillions of them, and because of that, you didn't order before that many 594s. I'm looking at you like you had a rabbit on your head. The 594 we finally take from core down.
It's that guy.
What do you mean, that guy?
Well, you're yelling at Ross. It's not his fault,
I'm not yelling at anybody.
All right.
Passionate.
Actually, you asked me a straight question, which is, has it ever surprised you? Yes, sometimes it's dead backwards. The market gives the product permission or it doesn't give it permission. Right now, ADATs don't have permission in the market, but they did at one point. They were backing cars up to the stores and getting them into the trunks as fast as they can.
Absolutely.
So it happens all the time. It happens all the time that things get permission and things don't. Of these 3 pedals, the first pedal that got permission was Horsemeat.
Yep.
And then it backed off. And then everybody bought Mary Cries as a boost pedal. And then they figured out whether it was a good compressor later. And then went to the trees. Everybody was confused by it. When John Mayer played through one, he goes, that's not a pedal. That's a piece of professional audio gear.
Yeah.
It's hard to control. Brian Ewald, our demonstrator, taught me how to use this pedal, and I taught him how to use that pedal. We made him way too powerful. But then he turns the knob in a position I would have never turned it, and it's doing things I didn't know. When Brian Ewald's doing a Horsemeat, he's turning the voice way up, turning the treble off, turning the bass down, turning the level about here, and he's got the gain cranked.
Yes. The way to do it.
Yeah, well, he's adding high mid-range, taking out high end.
Yep.
And for me, I would have never said it that way, but it works. I mean, I would have been more,
That's the beauty of it.
in the middle, right? But he had to show me. This thing, you don't even think about turning one of the LFOs off. You're always thinking about them fighting each other, right?
Yeah.
But we're doing it more and more and more. You can make this thing like it sounds like a Hendrix Univibe if you use one of the LFOs. But the regeneration knob, it should have been a switch up here that says flange or chorus,
See, but that's the restless creativity that I'm talking about. It almost seems like
but it
you're
stopped
always
people
thinking,
from
oh,
buying it because they didn't know how to get their head around it.
I mean, I loved that the minute we tried it today, and I'm not saying I don't own one. I've never used one. The point is, it sounded good in a myriad of
then I
ways.
haven't done my job.
Well, that's not true.
I got people that love PRS products, but you'd never played through Horsemeat before today.
Nope.
We should never have admitted that.
I know.
He admitted it.
I
On
know.
camera.
He's almost too honest. All right, so we've talked your ear off, and let's kind of get
What's
out of the
math
world of
question?
guitar.
Why do
No
you keep
math question.
No, you keep asking
I'm just
him.
being an idiot.
It's true.
Some call it me being awake. But for me, as a player, as an appreciate, you love music, I would hope. Is there one
I think
aha
I kind
moment?
of reek of that one.
Yeah. Was there a time, whether maybe you were younger or more recently, where you heard there was one note that made you go, that's it right there. That's what I'm chasing. One note. I can tell you mine if you want me to go first, but I'd love to hear yours.
I'll play it right now. At the time, I didn't have an amp plugged in, and I would drop the needle down, and he would go. And it spent literally 4 months playing those 2 notes. So he does it in another place.
Oh, samba too. Yeah. It's one of my favorites from him. And then that beautiful.
It took me half a year. I mean, that first line, boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-dee-dee, it's so beautiful.
It is beautiful.
So then I went and learned every note that Paul Rodgers sang on Fire and Water, the record.
Yeah. Free.
Do you remember every morning? I mean, da-da-da-da, wouldn't do, right? That took a long time.
Yeah.
So I was learning vocal lines, or guitar lines, right? Here's another one.
Almonds? Yep.
wow.
Yeah.
And most people don't understand that they're not playing that ahead of the drummers. They're playing it on the backside. It's like remember he was a Memphis guitar player.
Right.
That's on the backside of the beat. It's swinging too.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it. I was like, how can I? So for me, I was trying to learn the.
Pick up his neck.
He was always on the bass pickup.
Yeah.
So I was trying to learn how to do that with my hands. And I just kept dropping the needle down on. Until I had it.
Yeah.
So when you ask 2 notes, those are the 2 notes.
Well, and I hate to break this to you because you're wrong. It's Jeff Beck, Where Were You? Similar style melody. That was the answer, and I was hoping you'd say it, but this was really great.
Sing the melody.
It's literally the same 2 notes, I think, but a little higher up on the neck. You've never heard Where Were You? It's on Guitar Shop.
Guitar Shop's one of my favorite
But
bands.
Terry Bozzio.
But I think he did that with a harmonica in the arm. I think
Oh, that big high note, for sure. That makes me cry when I hear that.
I'm sorry, I don't think he did that with his hands. I think he hit a harmonica and did it with the arm.
It's still a note.
Okay, but you're talking about a genius here who sat on the couch for a year playing the harmonica on the G string and started to play the melody with
Yes,
the arm. I'm
yes.
sorry.
That's why my answer is correct. It's okay. It's not all for naught.
Check, please.
This is all good.
You just said I was wrong.
I know. Felt
That's
good.
ballsy.
It really is. I'm taking this, by the way. But listen,
It may be true. Would you
Russ
please
has a different
charge me
answer,
for
and
that?
he's not wrong. What's your answer, Russ?
You're
You're wrong. So that doesn't matter what he thinks either. Right?
It is your sense of humor is entertaining. I will give you that.
Thank you.
Good. I wouldn't want to be married to you. So what were you going to say?
I would probably go somewhere because we've ended as lovers with Beck anyway.
Oh, time
back to
out.
you.
Time out. Time out.
Oh, damn it, Russ.
Time out.
Oh, exactly. That's
Right?
exactly right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's like, you could end the song right there, I'd be happy.
Are you telling him to stop playing? No. Okay, because that's weird.
They're all over the place. They're everywhere. And then you get to swell with it too. Yeah. He's one of a kind.
Wait a second. You didn't say you could play that. That's pretty good.
I've been playing that tune for years. It's beautiful. We do our own version of it.
But think about it. That's someone who's in command of their instrument. It's not blazing. It's not. It's every note where it needs to be executed, in my estimation, perfectly. And that's the beauty of when you hear someone play like that. It always makes you want to chase it and get that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the prettiest guitar tunes that's ever been written.
Absolutely.
And from what I understand, Stevie Wonder gave it to him because he wanted Superstition back.
Yeah, I heard that too.
I read the same thing.
I don't know exactly how the negotiation went, but I don't really care. He became
glad it
known for,
happened.
he became known for the tune.
Oh, yeah.
And it's beautiful, and I've spent a lot of time trying to learn how to play it. Look, the one that I spent a year on, here, I'll show you.
You got it?
Hendrix? Something off Band of Gypsies, maybe? Yeah. Machine Gun.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but listen to the first chord.
It's clean. It's a little hard.
Now, I couldn't find that chord. And Michael Alt called me up after 6 months of me looking for it. He goes, I found the chord, I found the chord, I found the chord. I said, what is it? He says, it's this.
That's beautiful.
So here's the scale he was playing in.
Wow.
This is the chord you hear him play all the time. And it's swinging.
Oh, yeah.
hands on the 4. Here's the key. And he goes, oh, it's so good.
Right.
That took me a year to figure out.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, it's swinging.
It's all of it, yeah.
It's swinging.
Yeah.
It's swinging.
And then the
its
first
ass
note
off.
of that solo, we could talk for hours about that. Have you ever listened to the first note of Machine Gun? It will rip your head off.
The low string is just killer. Wow.
I can do it in E, but it doesn't sound the same.
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
Agreed?
I totally get that.
And the fact that he was playing a Strat tuned to standard tuning a whole step down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people don't think, but that whole gig, that whole Band of Gypsy gig was played a whole step down. Wow, what a guitar player. But the fact that it's swinging, that's all started with Mitch Mitchell. Mitch Mitchell was a jazz drummer.
Right.
Taught by Jim Marshall. A lot of people don't know that.
Really?
Yeah. Jim Marshall was a drummer. He couldn't play.
So I got time for a story you have to share. One last story.
But that was
got
fun.
hit.
Thanks
That was
for-
fun.
Yeah, but didn't that feel good?
But you asked me about 2 notes, and it started all with Barbarella.
Yep.
Doo-doo. I was like, are you that good?
Yeah.
How can you play 2 notes and it sounds like nobody else? That was mind-boggling to me, and I needed to figure that out.
Yep.
And it still gets you excited to this day. I mean, that's magic. It's awesome.
And most people play all the free tunes wrong. Most people, I mean, do you ever see do you ever see the interview with Jimmy Page about
I saw Steve Stevens did that. He's like, it's a little out of tune on purpose.
No, he's bending
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I see it too.
I'm the whole step down. Don't
But
sound
still,
right unless it's knee.
But when you hear that, you go, that's it.
It is
It kind of takes the mystery out of it, but it's still exciting.
So I got that from Greg Benedetto from Guitar World Magazine. He walks into our booth in Frankfurt. He goes, Page, show me how to play All Out of Love. I was like, show me. And he shows me. I was like, that's it. That's dead right.
And it was
and
right there.
sometimes the D was open and sometimes the G was open against the bent D.
Oh, nice.
Oh, so good.
Such a beautiful.
People forget it's the way they played it.
No.
But if I get another pedal, that'll do it.
hey, do not dismiss that. By the way, this is yours. Yeah, I think you're
You're
right.
mean.
I am.
You are mean. I just gave you that.
I put it back.
And
You said I
because
couldn't
I
have it.
said something about your
take it.
pedal addiction that you didn't like.
I don't have a pedal addiction.
You're a lying.
I can stop at any time. Russ, you go, and then we got to wrap.
Oh, you promised us a story before we filmed.
About what?
You said something about a NAMM Fender booth.
One day, I was at the Vintage Guitar Show, and Fender had a booth. It was about, that wasn't that big, it was pretty small. And I walked into the booth, and it had been 10 years since Stevie Ray Vaughan had died, you know. And I walked into the booth, and I went, you got 2 dead guys selling so many guitars from the grave, I can't stop. And I went, and I walked out of the booth, and everybody was
Like that guy
dying.
from Newark.
Well, that was different. I got attacked in the Newark train station by a guy.
Sorry, didn't mean to
What was it? What was he screaming at me? I can't remember. I'll remember in a minute.
I have a few ideas, but I kept them inside this time.
And it was okay because he had passed 10 years before. But the truth was, I couldn't talk to Steve Ray Vaughan about what we were doing. I couldn't talk to Hendrix about it. I mean, if they were alive, I'd be knocking on their door. And I should have knocked on Steve Ray Vaughan's door because he was alive when I was making instruments, but they hadn't matured enough, I thought, to be able to reach him.
Interesting.
And I left him alone. Powerful guitar player. Had ability to get everybody's attention and have it glued on his experience. You know? So,
Now, did you get kicked out of the booth for saying that, or were they
I
just
just walked out disgusted, and they cracked up laughing. It was kind of courageous, me accusing them. You know, like you guys.
And it's not like you to be outspoken,
Well-
so that's
You know something? I learned that wasn't a given. So let me explain. When I was in my house when I grew up, if I said it was some certain way, everybody say, no, it's not that way. It took me 10 years in a room by myself building guitars to start to believe what I thought, not what I was told was true or wasn't true. And then I spent the first 10 years of my first marriage in psychotherapy to straighten it all out. So I was literally like, my leg didn't work right, and they were working on it until my leg worked right. I needed to get this thing on the top of my shoulders to work right. And when I started, if I got scared, my eyesight would shut down and I would speak in broken sentences. I don't do that anymore. When he scares me, which he doesn't, but at one point in my life, it probably would have scared me. I would have literally started looking at the floor and started babbling. Now I look at him and tell him he's hard to deal with and he needs to get a therapist himself.
I have one, actually. Thank you very much.
Well, I tried to be your therapist.
I feel lighter after this.
And it did not work.
Well, on that glorious note.
Look, you kept asking me about math. What's that?
Nothing. Math is nothing. It's stupid.
Math is my whole life. Both my parents were mathematicians. My mother was a special education teacher for math for special ed kids and taught them how to do math when they had no chance of doing that. She was really good at it. My father was an applied mathematician for the Navy because he was a polio victim. He wasn't allowed in the armed forces, but he did a lot of things you've heard about. Doesn't really matter. So I was, supposedly born with a math gene, which I did not have. Algebra in my house was literally a screaming fight. It's easy, you should understand. I don't understand. You got to understand. You start trying to teach me solve for X, I'll get in a fist fight with you. It's so bad. I'm literally a PTSD from algebra and calculus. It's bad. So my son carries the gene. He got on the BC Calculus 2 test, he got the best, aced the entire test and got the Maryland Award for the best grade for the test. He had no teacher, and he had the book, and he studied one day. He has the gene. Right?
Wow.
He giggled with his D+ average at the entire graduation thing because they had to award him the math award when he just barely passed to graduate from. And he ended up with a math degree from UMBC, so it's all fine.
Yeah.
He says, and he's a math tutor. He says, Daddy, and Sam's brilliant at math. He goes, you have the gene. I said, no. He goes, no, you have the gene. Math is taught 3 ways. It's taught numerically, 1 + 1 = 2, algebraically, solve for X, and graphically. And I went, oh, graphically? Yeah, I mean, that's what a guitar maker does. It rotates a part in his head like a video game. So I'm doing graphic math. So for me, I can see that on the bottom of a cup, there's a ring that keeps it from moving around. I can see parts from 3 dimensions. So for me, trigonometry and geometry, I aced every test. It was easy. Algebra was a 0, but I was out of balance that way. Numerically, I pretty much 1 + 1 = 2. I got that one. 1 + 3 is 4. It's not that hard for me. Tell me to solve for X. Oh, we'll go outside. It's not good. But graphically, I've got it. And so for me, everything that we've invented at PRS, I have a way of looking at the schematic graphically in my head. I'm not doing the calculation for exactly what frequency the roll-off is if the capacitor is that value, but I generally understand what the impedance of the circuit is, and if I double the value of the capacitor, that it'll go an octave farther down. I mean, I understand it in a graphic kind of way. So for me, math has been a big part of PRS because we're graphically drawing all the parts for the guitars constantly. I was a draftsman for all the parts. Drawing all the jigs and fixtures is geometric. So, that part of math I feel like I understand. But I'll tell you what, calculus did not go well for me. I failed it. There were 42 people that started that class. 3 people passed. The 4th person, the last one to go before the final was me. I knew I wasn't going to pass it. So the people who weren't going to pass the final just didn't go to it. The next year, same number of students, everybody in the class passed but 1. And I learned that year what a good teacher was and what a bad teacher was. Because the first teacher, only 3 people passed his class, and the second year, everybody passed the class, same class.
Wow. No, it's telling.
It is telling. You can learn how to teach from a good teacher or a bad teacher. It's hard to learn how to play guitar well from a bad guitar player, but it's really easy to learn how to teach from a bad teacher because you don't do anything they do.
Well, that's true. And I think to some degree, I think part of where you are mathematically inclined is that you may not know what the value is, but you know it when you hear it. And you know to go, whoa, stop. That was it.
Yeah.
And so you don't go, okay, it was this kilohertz. But the key is to have an ear and know when it resonates with you. And that is math and it's not. There's a little more voodoo to it.
I used to teach music in the math department at the turn of the century.
Yeah, okay.
The math department and the music department was the same department, 100 years ago, which my father used to say all the time. Look, I don't know. I'm an odd duck. I was raised by mathematicians. They didn't know what a guitar maker was, and my father thought I was going to get stuck in a one-room shop and never learn how to deal with people. And it turned out quite different than he was worried about.
Sure.
My mother's still alive. At one point, something really bad happened to me. She said, I didn't know what to do, Paul, so I taught you math problems. It was the only thing she knew how to engage me to get my mind off what had happened.
Did it work?
For the moment. I mean, I'm sorry, I was probably doing the math problem and worried about the thing at the same time. I was probably double tasking and she didn't even know. It doesn't really matter. Look, I like your business. I have been around it a really long time. It's an honor to be here. Sorry COVID put such a driving wedge in between the travel, but I'm back. And I invite you to come to our place. We should talk about things that are changing really quickly. And the internet business is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And I have a feel for how some of it's going. You know a lot of things about it that I don't know the inner workings of, and I know some things that you might find interesting. I would love to have that communication with you. It's nice to have a forum to talk about what my belief system is, which is basically what you've been investigating. And nobody ever asked me about the 2 notes ever, but those are the 2 notes I learned from. By the way, one's vibratoed and one's not.
Let's see, that's the fun.
Yeah, but until I could exactly duplicate it, I didn't know either.
But it drove you nuts.
No, I thought it was beautiful.
But not being able to replicate it.
No, it didn't drive me nuts.
He doesn't want to agree with me. Then.
No, I didn't, because it did. You're telling me what my emotional response was at the time.
And I know what it was.
It did not drive me nuts. I thought it was beautiful, and I wanted to learn it.
We could overdub it later. What we're going to do is your mouth's going to be moving, and I'm going to go, you're right, Ryan, thank you.
Send him to therapy.
Too late. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Really.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for watching, and a huge thank you to Paul Reed-Smith for being here with us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this, and to check out all the awesome PRS products mentioned in this video, head on over to AmericanMusical.com.